know that we're short in time, so let's just start. My name is Mina Chung, and I'm the founder of Money with Mina. It is a platform for female community focusing on financial literacy. So we have a vision to empower 50 million Vietnamese women on their financial security journey. And I would like to ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce yourself, and then we can start with the main agenda of the discussion. Start with Winnie. Yep.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm very conscious that we are between here and lunch, so I'll keep it really short. I am Winnie, country manager for Mastercard. I'm based here in Ho Chi Minh City. I cover Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Very happy to be here with everyone.
Hi, I'm Matt. I've lived in Vietnam 10, 11 years. Did my middle high school back in 6th, 10th grade. Came back 5 years ago. And I've been working on digital transformation for Ekko Group. And then 2 years ago, I co-founded Ekko in the field of financial inclusion, which I'm quite excited to share about.
Hi, my name is Giang, and I'm the founder and CEO of Tititada, which is a fintech platform. So I myself have almost 20 years of working experience in the finance industry as a professional. Before I decided to start a fintech company, also very happy here today to share about financial inclusion journeys of Tititada.
Thank you. My name's Vinnie, Lauria, and I think I'm actually on this panel because I have an odd connection with everyone on here. I actually live down the block from Winnie, so we're neighbors. Mads was an intern of ours and turned him on to the whole startup scene, and I had the very great fortune of investing in Zong's company. And my firm, Golden Gate Ventures, we invest in early stage technology companies across Southeast Asia.
Great. Looks like we have a very efficient in time panel. It's a brief introduction. So before we kick off, let's talk about the important idea of financial inclusion. The concept, it's all about making sure every individuals and small businesses to have the access to a vital financial services like banking, credit, insurance, saving, investment, you name it. And these financial services can empower people to improve their lives, support small businesses to grow, and to provide an inclusive environment for community. So that's financial inclusion. And now as we move forward towards the more digital world, then imagine all of us have a bank account, a credit card, insurance policy. Now the financial industry needs to leverage on technology to see how they can scale the efforts, include more individuals and more small businesses into the equation. And that is digitalization, right? So that's the enabler of the financial inclusion. And that shift can actually help push a more positive collaborations in the financial industry, put our heads together looking at trends, and see how we can further enhance financial inclusion, especially to reach more underserved populations. So today we're quite lucky to have this panel of experts. They are industry insiders, professionals, financial professionals, tech leaders. They will share how they are working together or building something in the space of financial inclusion to make sure that it's more affordable, more accessible for everyone, and making sure that all individuals and small businesses can have the participation in a formal financial services industry. So let's start with the first question. This is for all of you. The flow is really, looking at the problems and the collaborations that we have in the industries, and then move forward the trends. And, of course, at the end of the day, we want to take away in terms of, what kind of innovations that, happening in the industry where, we can scale our reach and make sure that it's more inclusive for everyone to be part of the financial system. So the first question is for four of you, the problems that you aim to address in the work that you're doing in financial inclusion in Vietnam, and who are your partners and target communities you're trying to engage. with your products and services. So can I start with Winnie? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But I think, let me take a step back and give, so everything that Mina said is definitely true. And that's why we're all very focused on financial inclusion. But why? Really, why? I think what she said is definitely true, but what does it really mean to all of us? So Mastercard globally, we have been very active. We have an aim to bring 1 billion people into the formal economy by 2025. As of last year, we already hit, I think, 870 million. So we're definitely going to hit our numbers. But why? Why is that important? I think, besides just saying that it's important, what does this mean? I think it's multifacets in why we're doing this. As an individual, or really even as an SME, right? Sure, cash works. Let me put it out there, cash works. We are not here to remove cash. Cash works. But why go digital, right? Why need a cashless payment? What are we solving? I think at the end of the day, we are trying to solve for transparency and data that will help the government plan better. Again, not like we want to give all the data to the government, but knowing where the money flow is, where the issues are, being able to flow up and making macro and even micro decisions for the country. We think that's very important. It's not just about surfacing the tax and then be able to tax the people. I think that's just a good outcome out of that for the government. But a lot of data can be used and should be used, financing or anything that leads to that, right? That's important from our overall government planning. But for businesses, for example, right, SMEs, individuals, SMEs, right? So people actually they realize it, but they don't realize that actually going cashless solves a lot of the problems. How many times have you heard of SMEs saying, I have problem getting financing? The banks are not lending me money. They're asking for 1 billion data points, right? And in this country that does not have credit bureau, right? So all the more they're asking for more and more documents because guess what? You did all your transactions in cash. How will the bank know that you actually did $1,000 yesterday and it wasn't $10 yesterday? There's no proof, right? So the more you do cashless, and I don't even just mean Mastercard, I just mean cashless overall, right? The more you do it, the more it surfaces, the more you have proof of your transaction. Guess what? The banks may be the one that's turn around and go, I saw you did this much in your receiving yesterday because I saw this in your terminal. Would you like half of that in loans? Banks are always willing to lend, but they're not going to lend to somebody without any data, right? So once you have data, right, when SME is saying, they're asking me for a lot of information, think of it another way, right? Instead of going to informal lenders, because the banks are not lending you and you're paying 20, 30, 50%, try paying 2%, 1%, whatever, for a card terminal that you will receive, right? It does pay off. So using this, and especially from women's perspective, where a lot of the collaterals are in their husband's name or in the family's name, this becomes even more acute. So that's why for us, driving financial inclusion is not just only about, please use cashless and driving our business. Yes, it kind of does as an offshoot, but we really do believe there's a big benefit to the economy overall. And for me personally, for women overall, I'm very passionate about that as a team member, we know. So yeah, I've said a lot, but I think that's a lot more we can speak about.
Well, for sure, I have a say in that, but then conscious of time. Matt, do you see the same kind of problems in your field of work? Or
Sure. So one of the big problems that we are looking into is the issue around payday lending. So last year, there was a survey done by the National Federation of Labor Union where they went out and surveyed a few thousand workers, factory workers. And through the survey, they saw that 50% of the respondents, they had a black credit loan, or they had a family member who had one of these loans. And more crazy, 50% of those 50%, they had been harassed, assaulted, or were getting into bad debt traps, which is crazy. And what's more crazy, it's quite normal, actually, outside the big cities. And so just a few days ago, I saw my boxing trainer I was telling him in my broken Vietnamese what I'm doing, and he explained to me in Nguyen province where he lives, all his friends has these loans, and they're actually switching jobs every 3 or 4 months, so the payday lenders don't know where they are. So they're playing hide and seek with essentially the mafia, and they don't really know what kind of these consequences. So it's not so weird because a lot of workers are living paycheck by paycheck. They don't have access to formal credit. So if they need a bit extra cash, they'll go to family and friends. If they can't get it from family and friends, they'll go to the payday lenders. They can get money in 1 or 2 hours. They just need to upload the ID, phone number, and then that's it. What we do at Ekko, so that's kind of the problem we're seeing. What we do at Ekko is we help solve those short-term liquidity needs for workers. And we do that just by giving workers access to their pay on a daily basis. So we're used to the norm of getting paid every month. But what we see is if we give workers access to the pay after 2 or 3 weeks, that can help with that liquidity gap. And we do that in collaboration with the employers. So we sign an agreement with the employer. They will stipulate a guarantee for the advancements we give to the workers. After that, we'll integrate with the payroll system so we know who works there, integrate with the timekeeping system so we know when they go to work. And then when a worker goes to the factory, they check in every day at work, they can go on our app, they can see how much they've earned, take it out, receive it in 15 seconds. Company guarantees it, sends us back at the end of the month after deducting at the salary slip. So what we've seen in the last year through our ICPs or ideal customer profiles, especially in the South, factories with 1,000 workers, about 150 to 200 people will be advancing every month. And so we're still quite a small, humble startup. We had our first big customer about a year ago, and we've done 25,000 transactions since. And I truly like to believe that every single transaction has done a little difference, and maybe half of them have prevented people from going to payday lenders by just giving them that extra little cash.
Thank you, Matt. And I work very closely with you on some of the projects, and I really appreciate that, every pitch that he has, there will be a 2-page of financial inclusion and education, right? It's not just about providing the financial services to the target audience that he wants to go after, but it's more like, pitching financial inclusion is important. And this is, really towards, as a reminder, the underserved populations. And I really appreciate, and I vote for that, right? For all the companies who should have that 2-page, talking about financial inclusion and education. Ms. Yan?
For me, I really think financial inclusion and financial security is actually very important, especially for Vietnam. Because when you look at Vietnam, we are still an emerging country, and the financial literacy in Vietnam is actually very low. It's only 35% of the Vietnamese populations understand the concepts of financial and financial planning. And then if you look at the financial literacies in Vietnam, according to ADP, it's very low. It's 4.0 something compared to other countries. I have a chance to do a project, to study on the pension fund systems in Vietnam. And we also found out that the Vietnamese elderly right now, there's about 12% of the Vietnamese are under retirement age right now. And most of them do not have any social and healthcare system to support them. And then as the population getting age, and especially by 2030, Vietnamese, we would have about 20% of the populations above 65 years old. And many of them do not have social insurance or do not have the mandatory health insurance system. So these problems with financial security become more severe in the coming future. And that is why what Tititada does is we want to provide equal access to investment for everybody so that they can start on this investment journey, make investment become a habit, and eventually building wealth and prepare for their financial security as they become aging. We are a fintech platform, and I do believe, again, sharing with Vinnie and Ekko, we can only do this and bring this product to many people through digitalization. So in fintech, there's a fin component. where you bring all the financial products and you use tech so that you can approaching more and more people, even in rural areas or in other parts of Vietnam as well.
Thank you, Ms. Yan. Vinnie, I think on the investment side, it's really important as well, and that would probably be a different sets of problems that you're seeing in terms of address the financial inclusion that we're seeing today, and also to help support the folks that you invested in or the platforms that you invested in so that they can scale the efforts and reach more. So what problems do you see on the investment side in terms of?
Sure. So what's interesting is with the investor hat on, these problems become opportunities, opportunities for scale. And so one of the investments I had shared that we did is Rumah Mapan in Indonesia. So basically going after the underbanked, the unbanked around Indonesia, where money needs to move around the country, whether it's to a family member paying a bill, and therefore with that sort of movement, cash is kind of difficult. So what they set up was a whole bunch of little like arisans where basically you could have one person, if it's a really tiny village, like an elder, maybe it's your aunt or uncle, that would be banked, and then you could give them cash, and then they could move money for you. And the way this started out in Indonesia, before some of the regulation and rules changed, was actually going quite throughout the whole country, especially with e-commerce, as people want to start to buy things online. That company was growing so fast that Gojek actually acquired them. This was back in 2016, 2017, and it became GoPay. So a lot of people are familiar with GoPay and the wallet, but that actually started out as Rumah Mapan, the founder of Rumah, became the CEO of GoPay. So you can see where something like this, where it started, kind of the pain point, all of a sudden became mass market across Indonesia. And GoPay does support banked people with Visa and Mastercard. So it became actually a very, very popular application. So what I like to look at it as is, while it's a pain point, there's definitely a growing opportunity there. And when a VC investor kind of partners up with the founder like that is very mission driven, there's huge success ahead.
Following on that, of course, on the technology side, the innovation side as well, right? That can actually put in place to help advance the financial inclusion. And given the example that you have for other countries, that what we can learn from, looking at Vietnam context in terms of advancing the technologies and making sure that we can scale, how far are we, and what do you see in Vietnam?
Sure. So I think like on something like that, I don't know if there needs to be what Rumah Mapan started in like 2012, 2013 necessarily need here. But just to give an idea of like how valuable, the company was acquired for 160 million US. So it was the biggest acquisition in Indonesia. So again, there's a lot of value there. I think if you look here to Vietnam, there's a number of services like sitting on the stage, which around building up wealth for young professionals and understanding how to invest. Early wage access, that's something that we have invested in across a few different countries in the region. And that is, as Matt said, it's doing phenomenal good for the employees that are taking it. And the reality is for the employers, it actually helps them as well, because then they have higher retention. Definitely sad if somebody's leaving because it's a loan shark, but just the idea that your employer is providing sort of these wellness sort of support packages, including daily payouts, is actually something that helps with retention. What's interesting is in this part of the world, and maybe more Vietnam than some other places, is actually convincing the employer of that value. And that's probably where you spend more time. But if you look to other parts of the world, you've seen it, and even Walmart in the US is one of the kind of early pioneers in this space and realizes, hey, this actually creates a much better relationship with the employee. So it's kind of a win-win from both sides.
Thank you. One of the things that I also mentioned in my intros in terms of when we leverage on technologies, also one of the effort is to provide more positive collaborations between all the players in the industry. So that's really formed my next question. How can collaborations in your experience between, let's say, the startup and the traditionals and non-traditionals, and even on the investment side, to be structured to promote the economic empowerment for the low-income groups? That's really, the essence of the discussion today. At the end of the day, it's the economic empowerment, right, for the underserved populations. So with that, maybe, I'll start with Winnie.
Yeah, so actually it's also building off what Vinnie said, right? Definitely with the advancement of technology and like internet, the growth of internet, it's really enabled us to do things that we probably couldn't have done 5 years, 10 years ago. It also allows us to scale a lot more quickly, allowed us to go into also more rural areas a lot better than we could ever do that. But we can never do this alone. So for example, I think we're all in different layers and areas of driving financial inclusion, which is a big goal. And I think that every one of us has a part to play in this. So Mastercard, for example, right? At the core of this, Mastercard is just about moving money, your payment, your payee and your payer, right? But more importantly, is validating that you're the right person to send and you're the right person to receive, right? And we've got all these capabilities, encryption, security, you name it, right? Behind that payment itself. So we've already invested in making sure, the payment itself is safe and secured, right? Then a lot of fintechs, as you scale, and you spoke about Indonesia, GoPay or whatever, right? You can then focus on the business area, right? On how do you scale, but that way we come in is once you know who you need to pay to or who you need to receive from, it's just a click of the button, or automated for that matter, actually, right? So there are a lot of ways that we can partner without encroaching into each other, and actually a lot of value add that we can bring to each other. It's a very big industry. It's a very big problem to solve. No one party, I think, will solve it, and we definitely won't be. And that's why we partner with a lot of parties, including NGOs, fintechs, to be able to drive access and scale that we may not be able to have, but we may have the payment technology behind it to make sure that the payment is safe and secure. So definitely, it'll be a big partnership for us all across.
We have a reminder, we have 10 minutes left, and just like a second question. Matt?
Sure, we should talk afterwards, by the way. But I think also to build on top, I think for banks, they still need data, accessibility, and speed, and that's what's not allowing them to access what we call the underserved, the lower income markets of Vietnam. They're more targeted corporate clients or more higher affluent individuals because it just makes more money. And I think that's where the collaboration with startups was going through the hard work of convincing all the employers to integrate their systems and giving them this financial accessibility to their workers. That's where banks and startups can really partnership. For example, just with us, in terms of data, after we integrate into the infrastructure of the company, we have information about their payroll, what do they earn, who are they, how long have they been working there, when do they go to work, and also have they actually followed through on our financial education content, and did they score 10 out of 10? And so all of that information builds up a profile that we can aggregate, we can provide it to the bank, and then hopefully the bank will want to use that in order to facilitate different financial services which we can do very quick, because we already have all the infrastructure. It's just about the bank wanting to build in their digital banks that accessibility and quick money transfer. But yeah, I'll stop here.
The financial industry itself is a very heavily regulated sector in Vietnam. And then all the financial institutions, even though they have licenses, like all the big banks, they have licenses, they have fundings, but actually because of all the regulations and because of the operation is very large and very involving a lot of people. So a lot of time, like these traditional financial institutions, I would say, in my opinion, do not move as fast as they want it to move. And it's not about perception. The thing is that I've been working with a lot of millionaires and sort of like owners who do have a mindset of digitalization and who willing to spend a lot of money, even like $100 million on digitalization process and trying to bring more products to the platform, but it's not easy to do. So a lot of time there's the collaboration between the traditional business and the fintech is to speed up the process. So as fintech, as a young and a small organization, things move very fast. It can do, it can trial, we can make error. And then when we have the product, it's just launch. And then if the thing is launched and testing and it working, then the banks or the traditional institution can adapt. So instead of like, you don't have to build every single modules in your organization. You can just have like partnership with other fintechs and companies so that you can have a platform where you have other services that you want. So I see there's a lot of collaboration. And on fintech, we also need customers. We also need access to customer. We also need licenses. We also need like all the resources and expertise large corporation has as well. So this sort of partnership is a win-win, and this is things that can foster the economic growth of Vietnam in the coming years.
I can actually relate to that because I used to work in a very traditional banking system, and looking at fintech, more like the client acquisition, like to get it fast, to provide a platform where it's accessible and affordable for the consumer. And we always say that traditional banks do not move fast enough, and I can really relate to that what you answer. Vinnie?
I don't know, I mean, just with time, would have anything more color to add, so.
So, okay, I think, this is just like the second question, but let's now look at like exciting trends and opportunities for Vietnam, for example, because that's how you're going to set your strategies in terms of, scaling. So maybe I start with Vinnie on that.
Sure. So the idea of financing is from, again, an investment standpoint is an opportunity. The idea of moving off a black or gray market. What shocked me is when I first came here, it's like, oh, what are all those bumper stickers on the sides of walls? And it's loan sharks. And that doesn't exist in Indonesia to that sort of extent. I mean, it's there, but you don't just see it every day in front of you. And what I look at, Vietnam's a very entrepreneurial society. A lot of times people are taking money, it's not to go consume and buy something. It's actually, I have this idea, I'm starting this side business. That's phenomenal. And so that is what people should be borrowing some money for but they should be doing it in a healthy, constructive sort of way. So I think that's the opportunity. Lending to small businesses. I mean, there's been so many models pioneered in China and India, things that do lending, and then it's revenue sharing when you get paid back rather than just paying as a straight loan. And again, being digital is so important, where in China that's very easy with WeChat Pay. But if you get that sort of digital record, we've invested in companies in Indonesia that do the invoicing for SMEs. And then they don't say they do lending, but when they see these companies do really well, they approach them and say, hey, we have these products, just like Winnie was saying. And that's been a phenomenal sort of growth model. So I think that's the opportunity in Vietnam.
Yeah, and to write on that, I'm working with the big community of women. I mean, many of them are actually SMEs, very small businesses. Of course, we talk about programs and help. It's not just on the funding side. Of course, all the business will start with that. But then the skill sets that can actually help them grow. And then we have all these programs from incubator and accelerator. But when it comes to those programs, it's more like, if you don't have a tech attached to your business model, you're not welcome. And now it's like women, right? There's no platform that actually focusing on that. So there's a lot of challenges and gap, right? And if there is an exciting opportunities for Vietnam, how can we close this gap, right? Yeah. So we need. I think for that message, it's more like, a program for women, and Mastercard is doing leverage on, some trends and exciting opportunities for the program. And
yeah, so I think also just to build on the runway, we definitely see huge opportunity here. And also, I think there's going to be huge innovation, and not just innovation per se, but even process innovation to get this going. Like, how does all these parties work together, right? So I think a lot is going to come out and can come out from Vietnam, because if you look across the world, right, either the government has stepped in to help a lot of this, so you already have one group of countries that are already like, kind of soft, right, or countries are, some of the governments are really stepping in. But I feel that in Vietnam, there's a lot of opportunity for public and private sector actually to play a very big role in the private sector to get this going. I mean, think about it, right? I think Vietnam, there are only like 13 countries in the world that has more population than Vietnam. So if you can solve it here, there's huge opportunity for every one of us. And that's where some of these platforms, right, that we bring together. We've developed this for like some of it in Africa and in other parts of the world that, like I said, we talked about ensuring the payee and payer are secured, right? But there are many ways after that to skin the whole payment, right? Even including, for example, in Africa, we're talking about government subsidies. Is not about money, but it's about knowing who you are and saying, okay, then you have 1 sack of rice and 5 apples and 6 carrots, whatever, right? And so when you go to the store, that is your cash. That is what you get, right? It's not cash, because to us, as long as it's value, and that's as long as you can know, we need to know who you are and what you need to receive, then what is the currency behind it? It's all interchangeable, right? So be it 1 sack of rice or 5 potatoes, I don't know. So that's innovation, right? But that needs what the market needs, and then we can then bring to the table, and we can create things like this that make sense for the market.
Matt, factory workers, right? What about the populations beyond that? Is that exciting enough? Underserved community, rural area, is that seen as exciting opportunities? For the model to expand? Like
serving the segment, you mean? Mm-hmm. I think also just in light of the topic today, really appreciate that we're talking about financial inclusion, because in my optics, I'm of course a bit biased. I think financial inclusion is one of the most important pillars when it comes to ESG. And I mean, in Vietnam, there's 50 million workers. Most are in agriculture, manufacturing, and they're really, the oil of the GDP machine in Vietnam, right? So, and financial stress is one of the leading stress factors when it comes to wellness. Most of the management we work with, or HR departments, they actually don't know how stressed their workers are. They just want to know that, we pay above market or around market, but they don't want to actually accept that, okay, maybe there's actually something we can do and take responsibility with. So for me, I love what I'm doing. I think there's huge opportunity, because there's a huge gap in terms of solving, and there's all the resources, all the technologies there. So yeah, that's.
Thank you so much. My God, we have 1 minute left. Yeah, we don't. Now it's gone. So maybe one question from the audience. I mean, no. I mean, I don't think that people can, would want to ask with the empty stomach.
They're waiting for lunch.
Any last minute, last thoughts? Maybe one last thought.
I was reading the news this morning. It's on Thanh Niên newspaper. And then the government was saying the real estate prices in Ho Chi Minh cities in Vietnam is so expensive. It's going to be as high as in Hong Kong in 10 years. Now, the real estate thing may not be related to financial inclusion, but actually quite a big chunk. Because in Vietnam, GDPs in Vietnam, 42.5% come from service industry. And these services industries are industry-related services. So all the mom and pop shops you're selling, it's real estate rental, and then all the hotels and everything. So when the services from real estate become so expensive, it leads to increasing in services. It makes us less competitive to the rest of the world, and it causes the financial security become a more important issue. So with that, I feel that what we're trying to do here in terms of financial inclusion is to increase the financial literacies in Vietnam and bring more financial product to the one that needs it. So that's the mission that we are, as a community, trying to do today. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening and including us. This topic is really important, and we really appreciate that we have even a slot in this 2 days program.
And thank you, everyone.
Audience for staying.
Thank you.